Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the outstanding final leg of the Triple Crown pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm great, Brian, and I have to do it. I've got to wish you a happy 30th birthday the day after, and let the HorseCenter fans know that it was your birthday, and say thank you to you for everything that you do for horse racing, Brian Zipsy, because you are the best.
I appreciate that, Matt. Thank you. Spoken like a true friend, and I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for all the kind wishes yesterday. But let's get right into the show, Matt. We're talking Belmont Stakes 2017. Matt, there's no Triple Crown on the line this year. Does that take anything away from this race for you?
Well, it certainly makes it different. There's nothing like when you're at Belmont and a Triple Crown is on the line. But hey, Brian, this is, if you're a bettor and a handicapper and all of those wonderful things that we love about horse racing, then this is an exciting Belmont Stakes. 13 horses in the field, most likely. The draw is tomorrow. And in my opinion, it's a wide open race, Brian.
Yeah, Matt, I think most people would agree with you this year. We will have a clear favorite in my eyes in Classic Empire. Classic Empire, the 2-year-old champion, the Arkansas Derby winner, an unlucky fourth in the Kentucky Derby on a wet track and a bad trip fourth there at Churchill Downs. And then, as I mentioned before, I thought he did a lot of the dirty work when he beat down Always Dreaming in the first part of the Preakness before finally getting caught late by the lightly raced and talented Cloud Computing. He comes into the Belmont probably, I don't know, anywhere from 3-2 to 5-2, Matt. I think he's the clear choice. But on the other hand, he's trying to do something very difficult. Arkansas Derby, Kentucky Derby, Preakness, Belmont Stakes, while we used to see it all the time, 4 tough races in 8 weeks is just not the norm these days.
It sure isn't, Brian. And, when I was thinking about the race, which I've done so many times, when we're talking about the Kentucky Derby, one of the things that we talk about all the time is, can any of these horses get 10 furlongs? Well, now we're here at the Belmont Stakes, Brian, and we're talking about 12 furlongs. So that kind of discussion that we have for the Derby becomes even crazier kind of discussion in the Belmont Stakes. They're never going to go 12 furlongs again. Somebody's got to get 12 furlongs, and it's a whole different ball game. But, back to Classic Empire, Norm Cassie said the other day, the one thing that he feels is that, with all the troubles that they had with Classic Empire in the late winter and early spring, at least he feels like the horse is relatively fresh, even though he ran in the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown.
Yeah, that's a nice thing for the Cassies to be thinking about their star 3-year-old. He's always been as either the best horse in this crop or one of the best horses in this crop. For me, Matt, the 12 furlongs almost becomes a war of attrition. Even more so than getting the 10 furlongs of the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont is about who can just stick around and last. By the way, that's one of the reasons I think we have to give a little extra look. I think I like him more than you, and I'm talking about the Japanese horse, Epicharis. Epicharis is a horse that's been trained to run farther than American horses are trained to run since he came to the barn there in Japan. Now, Epicharis is still lightly raced. He's only had 5 races, and of course, he's doing something pretty outstanding here, or a very difficult task, in that he's coming over from Japan. He had to be in quarantine before he left there. He had to be in quarantine before he came here. But remember, this is a race that he is trained for a little bit more than the American horses. I think no one really trains for the Belmont over here, by the way, Matt. Maybe for the Derby, but not so much the Belmont. The Belmont is more of a who's left over and who are the fresh horses that can take advantage of the horses that are left over. So the fact that Epicharis is trained a little differently than American horses, maybe bred a little differently than American horses, but also pointed for this race. This is unusual, too, for a foreign horse to really be pointed from the Belmont Stakes from day one. Epicharis, I will add, Japan, dirt courses, they always say is more conducive to Belmont or more similar to Belmont than other American tracks. So for all those reasons, I think 12 furlongs may be more than any other I think Epicharis is a horse to watch out for in the Belmont. Would you concur, Matt?
I would not concur with that, Brian. I think this is one of the cases where we really don't see eye to eye on a horse. Although I hear everything you said, Brian, and everything you said makes complete sense. But you know what, Brian? Until one of these horses comes over and does something, I'm not a believer. And Brian, dirt racing is not a priority for these horses in Japan. They have very few dirt races. They have very few graded races on the dirt over there. Epicharis's times, quite frankly, in his races have been nothing but slow. Okay, maybe that's okay in the Belmont Stakes, and maybe if he runs slow and steady, he can win the race. But like I said, this is a really, really tough task. His trainer has never brought a horse over to this country. I'm going to have to let him beat me because I don't think we're going to get a great price on that. I would rather try some fresh horses who are looking good, who may give us a bigger price.
Matt, that makes a lot of sense. We disagree, but obviously Epicharis has question marks. Matt, you talked about this as a wide open race. We mentioned one of the horses I think is an X factor in here in Epicharis, and of course the favorite, Classic Empire. But who are the horses you're thinking are fresh and looking good, to use your words?
Yeah, my other two likely horses I put three horses in the most likely category to win the race, and they're the three horses, that have the best speed figures and a lot of other things. One of them is Irish War Cry, and Graham Motion sounded a little bit like you in your discussion before, Brian. He's like, you know what? It's the Belmont Stakes. It's a classic. I'm going to take a shot. I got a good horse. I'm going to take a good shot. Maybe he can run steady and get to 12 furlongs, but he deserves a chance. And I agree with Graham Motion about Irish War Cry. He deserves a chance. He's run some of the best races of anybody in the field. And if he's on his game, he could be dangerous. The other horse that is one of my most likely horses is Taprit. I think his last two races are filled with excuses. His Derby was filled with excuses. He's prime with the Pletcher Kentucky Derby. Skip the Preakness, go to the Belmont Stakes where Pletcher has been very successful. Taprit, I think, is going to be the second choice. Brian, you'll let me know if you agree with that. So that's not a great thing. But I think those three are the most likely horses in the Belmont Stakes.
Yeah, Matt, as far as the odds, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who they're going to play. It could be Irish War Cry. I think Looking at Lee has to get some money. Epicharis, I think, is going to get bet a little bit. The Japanese horse, I think, has enough interest from me and others. Taprit could be the second choice, though. Yeah, Taprit is an interesting horse. There's a lot there that reminds me of last year's Pletcher entry, who I picked to win. He didn't win, but he ran a very good race, and that's Destin. Almost a similar running style. They're both coming from Tampa Bay. They both finished sixth in the Kentucky Derby, and they've both been freshened after the Kentucky Derby. So if Taprit runs the race that Destin did, obviously he could win or be right there. So Taprit is also one of the horses that I fear in here for sure. Maybe 5-1-ish, 5-6-1, I think wouldn't be bad on Taprit. Irish War Cry, I think, will be similar odds. It's still hard to tell just how good he is. I mean, the Holy Ball looked so good. The Fountain of Youth was a big disappointment. The Wood Memorial looked so good. And the Kentucky Derby, he really had good position all the way through the top of the stretch. And then he really came up empty the last quarter mile at Churchill Downs. So you have to wonder a little bit about Irish War Cry. But of course, if he didn't like the going in there, the fact that he was involved at the quarter pole, probably is a good thing and very excusable for him not to finish very well in the Derby. So, yeah, you're right. On his best day, Irish War Cry certainly is a threat here. He's a classy horse. 12 furlongs may be a threat. Of course, Curlin did it well. So it'll be interesting. Those are three horses. Your three to beat, or certainly three of mine to beat as well. One horse I haven't mentioned that I need to mention now, Matt, is Senior Investment, because I have a ton of respect for trainer Kenny McPeak. getting horses ready for big races, especially going long. I've seen it now for a long time where he pops in and out with horses. You wonder, is that horse going to get 10 furlongs or 12 furlongs? And they do. He's popped up in races. The King George and Queen Elizabeth, he almost won with a horse named Hard Buck. Of course, he upset the Belmont in a huge way with Sarava. Who else? Tejano Run was a very nice horse who ran big in the Kentucky Derby to be second. Even a horse a few years ago, the name is escaping me, Matt, but he ran against Union Rags and he had a chance at the 8th Bowl. So Kenny McPete's a trainer, I think, who knows how to get horses ready for a race like this. Senior Investment just keeps looking better and better. He was one of the horses I thought looked really good at Churchill Downs. Of course, we knew he wasn't running in the Derby, but he has a presence about him. And he's just been getting better and better. He seems to thrive on racing. He's run some really good races, won some races off a short rest before, like he's doing this time with only 3 weeks between his very good Preakness. And that was a good race, Matt, where he was quite wide, quite far back, and got up for third. And if you watch the gallop out for whatever that means, he was running past the wire on the Preakness. So Senior Investment joins Epicharis. Your 3 is one of my top 5.
Yeah, and I'm coming around on Senior Investment as I was writing my preview for the Belmont Stakes, which is up on Horse Racing Nation, and I really started to look at the PPs more. I agree. Senior Investment is a horse that's getting better. I think his victory in the Lexington was very easily dismissed by a lot of people, saying that field was a weak field, and it kind of was a weak field. But then he backed it up with his performance in the Preakness, and if he takes another step, and it doesn't have to be a big step, Brian, he can be a threat in there. Another horse also that I'm taking another look at a little bit more than I was before is Multiplier. I think he's another horse that has been getting better and could continue to get better and could be a threat to get a piece in the race. Some other horses I like less in the Belmont than I did earlier. One of them is Looking at Lee, and you can't do anything but take your cap off to Looking at Lee for how he's shown up in every race. But the Belmont concerns me. It concerns me that they may try and keep him a little bit closer in the early going on, and with a horse like that, he may not like that and throw him completely off of his usual running style. So I'm not as big on Looking at Lee in the Belmont as I was in the first 2 legs.
Matt, I'm with you right there. Looking at Lee, he was my top long shot in the Kentucky Derby. He ran a very good race, but I think the Preakness didn't set up quite as well for him. Certainly, Senior Investment was finishing better after losing more ground than Looking at Lee. So I'm off Looking at Lee a little bit too, and I don't like him if he's closer to the pace as well. That's just not who he is, and I think at 1.5 miles, that's going to be tough for him. Having said that, it wouldn't surprise me if he runs another good race. But at the odds, as a horse vying for even second favorite, Looking at Lee won't be on my tickets. Matt, let's take this opportunity. There's 13 horses. Let's talk about our top horses. I've kind of mentioned mine. Let's go down our respective top 5s. Do you want to go first?
Sure, Brian. And as I said, my top 5s, certainly, I'm going to put Taprit as my top horse, and I'm going to have Classic Empire and Irish War Cry close behind, and then I'm going to fill my other 2 spots with Senior Investment and Multiplier.
Okay, so I have talked to you on Senior Investment just a little bit, but I wasn't able to do Epicharis, and that's fine. All right, Matt, my top 5. Folks, I do have an aversion to picking favorites. I really steer clear of picking favorites. If Classic Empire brings his A game, I do think he will win the Belmont Stakes on Saturday. With the odds, though, I'm not going to pick him in my top spot. My top pick is going to be a horse who I think has a real shot to win and has odds. He's going to be 15 to 1 or so, and that's Senior Investment. So I'm going to pick Senior Investment, horse getting better, trained well to do this, And I think there's just going to be a reasonable pace. I think there's enough horses that like to be on or near the lead where this won't be one of those 115 Belmonts. So I think the fact that it's a reasonable pace, not a super strong field for the Belmont Stakes this year, I think it does allow a horse like Creator or Jazzle to make a nice rally in the stretch to win this. And for me, that's Senior Investment. Classic Empire, big respect for him. He's my number 2 spot. Tappert, I do think Tappert has a big shot, much like you. He'll be number 3. I'm going to throw in my X Factor horse, Apicharis. I think he might get that a little bit more than I want him to get that. He'll be 4th, and I do respect Irish Warcry on talent, and Grand Motion training doesn't hurt his bit, so he'll be my rounding out my top 5. All right, Matt, that's our top 5 for the Belmont Stakes. Hopefully, our viewers will take our top 5s and win a lot of money. That's always our hope here on HorseCenter. Matt, of course, this weekend, Saturday especially, but even a little bit on Thursday, plenty on Friday, and then moving forward, Saturday is just a huge extravaganza of great racing at Belmont Park. We need to talk about some of these other races. I'm going to start with the Met Mile, Matt. One of my favorite races overall, one of my favorite races of last year. Frosted. But this year, I think I have a horse who I really like, and he's going to come from off the pace. I'm talking about Awesome Slew.
Yeah, Brian, as I joked with you the other day in an email, I said, Brian, did you know they changed the name of the Met Mile to the Brian Zipsy Met Mile? Because I'll tell you what, folks, Brian has busted up the Met Mile the last 2 years. It's a big field, a lot of talented horses in there. I've got the Met Mile narrowed down to 3 horses at this point. I like Awesome Slew. I like Sharp Azteca. And I got a soft spot for Tom's Ready.
And Tom's Ready is another horse who ran a very good race Belmont Stakes Day last year to rally to win the Woody Stevens out in the middle of the track. So Tom's Ready will be on my tickets as well. I think we haven't mentioned the favorite yet, and that's the Baffert-trained More Spirit, who's been winning races at Arkansas and Texas recently in impressive fashion. 1 Turn Mile, I'm not sure if that's More Spirit's best game. I'm going to try to beat him in here. Plus, there's plenty of speed. He likes to dominate near the front. Sharp Azteca is a horse who I have amazing respect for, and I think is the most talented speed horse in the race. But he didn't run his very best race last year at Belmont Park, that sandy track at Belmont Park in the Woody Stevens last year. So I think Sharp Azteca, this might be a good spot to try to beat him at the flat mile. And with the expected speed, there are definitely some speed horses in here. I think Awesome Slew, from new to the Mark Casse barn, but has just been doing great. They've decided he's a 1-turn horse now. I've always thought he's talented. His last 2 races at Keeneland Churchill Downs were big when he got some speed and rallied. I think that's going to be the case. 1-turn mile with speed. Give me Awesome Slew all day long, Matt. I like him. I hope he's not even the second choice. I guess he could be the second choice, but shouldn't be lower than 4 or 5 to 1 at the least.
Yeah, and like you said, Brian, when there's a Baffert horse in there with a big name, you know that they're going to take a lot of action at New York and all around the country. So I think you're going to get a good price. And typically, Brian, the Met Mile is the race before the Belmont Stakes, although we don't know the order for sure. So, on this kind of day with big fields and good prices out there, I'm probably going to be looking to play a lot of daily doubles, and a horse like Awesome Slew at a good price will be nice to hook up with 4 or 5 horses in the Belmont Stakes. And I'll probably be looking at Tom's Ready also.
That's exactly what I'm thinking, Matt. Give me that daily double. We're assuming it's going to happen, Met Mile, Belmont. Awesome Slew with my 5 in the Belmont. I'll be very happy with that ticket. Matt, we're looking at some odds in the Met Mile, but in the Ogden Phipps, I don't know that we can beat the favorite. We can beat an overwhelming favorite. Having said that, Songbird's been away for a long time. Do you see any vulnerability chances in the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps?
Personally, I don't, but you're not being fair unless you ask the 2 questions that should be asked in Songbird's situation. 1, she's coming back off of a long layoff. Could she be a little bit short in here? You've got some very good horses in there like Karina Mia, and in the Ogden Phipps, Karina Mia is in a 1-turn race, which plays to her favor. The 2 times when Karina Mia lost to Songbird, they were going 2 turns. So that's a good thing for a horse that you and I both have a lot of respect for in Karina Mia. And the other question you have to ask about Songbird is, and we've seen it happen before, fillies come back as 4-year-olds, and sometimes they come back and they are just not interested in competing anymore.
Matt, you make 2 great points, two points that I was also going to make. Songbird, you never know. If motherhood is calling, maybe Songbird won't come back as well. And we've seen that before many times with top mares. However, the fact that Jerry Hollendorfer is such a patient, cautious trainer, and Songbird's workout pattern in Southern California, it kind of takes away the fear for me. I mean, she's just been working like clockwork for the past 2 months out there. She's been working well. I spoke with Hollendorfer on the phone recently. He's tickled with how she's coming up to this race. So for me, it's tough. I remember what Karina Mia did when faced against Songbird last year. It's tough to think about her losing, but you never know. Maybe that'll be a single in multi-race wagers, or maybe you try to beat Songbird after such a big break, but not me. Karina Mia, having said that, Karina Mia ran a very big acorn last year that we saw on the same day, so we know she likes this kind of trip as well.
Yeah, not me either, Brian. I fully expect to see Mike Smith and Songbird dispatching this field and running a really smash-up 2017 debut.
As she almost always does, man. Yes, sir. All right. Well, I just mentioned the Acorn. I think that's a very interesting race this year. You have the Kentucky Oaks winner. We got some odds on Abel Tasman in the Kentucky Oaks, but I don't think that'll be the case. Bob Baffert trained filly will be the favorite in the Acorn, but there's some very interesting horses. The ones I wrote down for you, Matt, might be the second, third, and fourth choices, but you're going to get some odds. Again, another sizable field with a clear favorite. Horses like Benner Island, Union Strike, and Salty.
Yes, absolutely, Brian. And Sweet Loretta's coming back off of a nice debut in 2017. Is she could be a factor in the race also. But again, Brian, I'm going to lean away from Abel Tasman again because I think that she's going to be a strong favorite and a well-deserved one. But she got such a perfect setup in the Kentucky Oaks when the 2 speedballs, Miss Sky Warrior and Paradise Woods, went out there and burned each other out. Not to say that Abel Tasman isn't very talented, because she is, but I'm gonna take a shot with Salty. I think Salty didn't get the best of things in that race and is very talented. And considering that maybe Abel Tasman isn't going to get quite such a strong setup, I'm going to take a shot with Salty.
Yeah, Matt, I was on Abel Tasman in the Kentucky Oaks, but I think the odds flip-flopping from 9-1 or so to heavy favorite, and I think she's probably a better 2-turn horse than a 1-turn horse. So the ones that I mentioned, Benner Island, especially Union Strike and Salty, are very interesting to me. I'm with you on Salty. Abel Tasman was better in the Kentucky Oaks. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But Salty's very lightly raced. I think a mile might be better for Salty. Union Strike, though, I was super impressed with the race she ran to just miss Benner Island in the 8 bells over Derby weekend. And Union Strike, I have a lot of respect for her, and I think a 1-turn mile could be right up her alley as well. Now, what else? The Manhattan, we have Divisadero. We have 2 Brutus, looks like a real distance champion running in the Brooklyn. Recruiting Ready, the just super fast 3-year-old going heading the Woody Stevens, though that's 7 furlongs. Maybe he's vulnerable there. C. Khaleesi and Desita in a very interesting New York handicap. The list goes on, Matt. We found out now that Whitmore is going to come back. At first, we didn't think he was going to come back this quickly after his nice Maryland Sprint win, but he'll be in the True North. What are some of the other highlights for you, maybe ones that I just mentioned, during this big weekend of racing?
I'm excited to see Whitmore run live. He's going for 6 in a row in the True North. How long can he keep putting it together? Because, man, did he look amazing down in Baltimore on Preakness weekend. For those of you that like long distance, On Friday, we got the Belmont Gold Cup Invitational. 2 miles on the turf with a field of 13 runners. Good luck handicapping that race. We got a bunch of horses making their first starts in North America. But, you know, we don't see stuff like that very often. That's super exciting. The Just the Game, Brian, is a race that I'm looking forward to with the trio of Dickinson and Celestine and Roca Roja, 3 extremely talented horses. Dickinson has been phenomenal in her last 2. Remember, she beat Lady Eli, and after Eli's last performance, you got to give Dickinson a ton of respect. So I'm looking forward to that race also. Amazing card. Sorry you're not going to be up here in New York with me.
Yeah, sorry I'm going to miss it, Matt. My first Belmont that I won't see in person for several years now. I've got other business to attend to the next few weeks. I'm glad you mentioned the Belmont Gold Cup. I, too, love distance racing. You see it more in other countries. It's nice that America has brought that into the forefront just a little bit the last few years, the Belmont Gold Cup. You know what else I like about the Belmont Gold Cup, Matt? Mid-race, I can go get a hot dog and a beer, and I can still see the stretch run of that race. So that's always nice as well. Hey, Matt, we talked about our Belmont picks, the Met Mile, the Ogden Phipps, all those big races that are happening at Belmont Stakes this weekend. You're going to have a great time. The fans are going to have a great time. But before we go, can we just talk about a few performances from last week? Number 1, 3-horse race, Matt, 3-horse race. People complain no end about only 3 horses in the Grade 1 Beholder Mile. I don't think it could have been much more of an exciting race, though.
That's for sure, you know, and the field size issue that they're having at Santa Anita, that's a whole separate question. But wow, Stellar Wind and Valdori just battled almost every step around the track, and Stellar Wind took a little bit of control coming down the stretch, but boy, Valdori didn't quit and was coming back at the end. You can't have a more exciting race than that. I don't care if there's 3 horses in it or if there's 13 horses in it. If you get a finish like that and they're super talented horses like Stellar Wind and Valdori, you got to enjoy it and respect the talent that was on the track.
Baffert said before the race, Valdori, this was a big, big race for Valdori. He had her fully cranked and she ran like it. Stellar Wind had to go out early and chase her early, and she still got the job done. Matt, I'm a huge Stellar Wind fan. I think she is a great filly and mare. I cannot wait, Matt Schiffman, to see 100% Stellar Wind against 100% Songbird. I think that's going to be huge. I can't wait to see that race. Bala Bali, Matt, we talked about Lady Eli a week ago, coming back from laminitis, beating laminitis, and becoming a Grade 1 winner again. Bala Bali, wow, what a story. A Triple Crown winner down in South America, laminitis up here in the United States, and he's now won 2 Grade 1 races in the last 3.
As a 7-year-old, I don't think anybody can argue he's better than he's ever been in his career.
Fantastic win for Bala Bali. We also heard the good news that Arrogate will be running twice this summer at Del Mar, the San Diego Handicap in July before the Pacific Classic in August. So that's good news. Parting shots from you, sir.
Yeah, and you know, Brian, after the Belmont is over, it's midsummer, and it's time to start thinking about the boutique meetings at Del Mar and at Saratoga, and thinking about the Breeders' Cup, because at Belmont this weekend, we've got win and you're in races already, and Bala Bali was a win and you're in victor out in California. So the hits keep coming in the world of thoroughbred racing. And as always, I want to thank Brett Workman, our producer of HorseCenter.
Thank you to Brett Workman. Thank you, folks, for tuning in every week to HorseCenter. We sure do appreciate it. We'll be covering all the big action as we move from the Belmont Stakes through the summer into the Breeders' Cup. Thank you to our sponsor, Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. As always, join us on Horse Racing Nation on a daily basis for all the latest news. And please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We always have great videos. HorseCenter, and others up there as well. Folks, we'll see you next week. Enjoy the final leg of the Triple Crown.